Hey yogis, in this Yin Yoga class we are going to work on hip flexibility, and this is another one that's pretty intense. You're going to want to have one block. You might not always need it, but it's just good to have around. And I also have this blanket here. We're going to be doing frog pose, which can be kind of intense on the knees. So if you want to grab like maybe 2 blankets or just a really long blanket that you can put under both, that'll be really helpful. But otherwise that should be pretty much all that we need. So hip flexibility, mainly external hip rotation, but we'll try to kind of get at the hip from all angles. First pose we'll begin in is a wide-legged child's pose. So as wide as you can get the knees, big toes together, and you want to try to drop your hips towards your heels, walking your hands all the way out and melting down towards the floor. So of course, the wider your knees are here, the more intense you'll feel this through the hips and through the inner groin. If the knees are too wide, it might start to feel like pain and compression in your low back. So if you're feeling any of that, it means you need to bring your knees a little bit closer in towards one another. And of course, your hips might not be touching your heels, which is perfectly fine. Over time, they'll get closer and closer. We want to try to relax the heart, the belly, just melting down towards the floor. Taking slow, steady breaths in and out through your nose, especially with these more intense practices. The first thing that tends to go is our breath. Either we hold the breath or we start breathing very shallow or very rapidly. So as much as possible, keep it really slow and very steady. Let's walk the hands in, lifting up. We'll come into a winged dragon pose next, which is a variation of low lunge. So from hands and knees, you can step your right foot to the outer edge of your right hand. And depending on your knee here, you can always use that blanket and put it underneath your left knee, or you can fold up your mat, just whatever you need if you need some extra padding. So this is option 1, keeping the knee and the toes pointing directly forward. If you want to do the winged dragon variation, you're going to curl your toes up and just roll to the outer edge of that right foot. So the hip, the knee, and the foot are all facing out at about a 45-degree angle. You're welcome to hang out here, or you can come down onto a block, maybe on your forearms, or directly down onto the forearms. And I like to keep the block underneath the forehead, just so that I don't have to really engage through the neck at all. So we want to relax the pelvis and let the hips be really heavy in this one. The arms are there to hold you in the pose, but we're not pushing against the floor, we're not resisting. It's really just for stability. If you were down on your forearms or on a block, just come back up onto your palms. And before we go and do this on the other side, we're just going to transition to swan pose on the right. So you can toe heel your foot over towards the left side of your mat so that you end up having your right knee behind your right wrist and maybe placing a block underneath the hips to square them off, or you can stay and hold exactly as you are and fold over that right thigh and right knee, right shin, coming down towards the floor. So getting deeper into the outer hip, outer glute with a big external hip rotation. Always remind yourself to let gravity do the work for you, using as little effort as possible, making this a passive practice. Let's start to ease out, push into the palms to lift up, and we'll come back to a tabletop pose, maybe extending that right leg back or doing some hip circles or pressing back to child's pose, just really whatever is intuitive and feels really good here. So 2 really intense asanas for the right side. We'll go and set up for the same thing on the other side, beginning with our winged dragon pose. So you can step your left foot forward to the top of the mat, and I am actually going to pad my right knee just because I still have that little bone bruise there. Pressing the hips forward and down. You can choose to keep your knee and your toes pointing forward, or you can curl the toes up and roll everything over to the side. So nice 45-degree angle here. Maybe up on the palms, on a block, on the forearms, whatever feels the best. Trying to match what you did on the first side, unless there's an injury preventing you to do so. And again, always reminding your shoulders, your back, and your arms to relax a little bit more. Imagine you can breathe directly into that left hip and left glute, inviting it to open a little bit more and to relax the longer you hold the pose. Come back up onto the hands. Transition into swan pose, or what some people call pigeon pose. So you can bring your left foot more towards the right side of your mat and align your left knee behind your left wrist. Align the pelvis so you're not leaning on one side more than the other, and fold on down. Slowly rise. Just like before, back to tabletop pose, maybe stretching that back leg behind you or taking some hip circles. And we'll be setting up for a shoelace pose. So taking a seat. So shoelace pose, you'll want to wrap your right leg over the left one, trying to stack one knee on top of the other. And if that's not really accessible, you're just going to bring one shin in front of the other and work on the fold from here. And you can always put a block underneath the knees or in between the thighs if there's a bit of a gap here. Maybe working the pose from up high, you'll probably feel already sensation pretty intensely here through both sides of the hips. Or if you feel like you'd like to go a little further into it, you can start to ease into the fold. And this is another one where having the block to support the head can feel really nice. And just relax your arms, nothing to be done here. Just relax your shoulders, your neck, your jaw. And breathing deeply. Push into your arms. Let's lift all the way back up. Before we do the other side, it might feel good just to straighten your legs out in front of you. Feeling the effects of that pose. And for shoelace on the other side, this time you'd be aligning your left knee on top of the right one, keeping the heels pretty close in towards you. Maybe working the pose by staying lifted up and tall through your spine or folding down once more. Push into the arms, unwind. And one last time, maybe extending your legs directly out in front of you. And we'll be coming into that frog pose next. And I'm going to turn so that I'm using the long edge of my mat just so I have even more padding here for the knees. And if you had a blanket or even just like a scarf or something, try to get it on its longest length possible. And so very similar to a wide-legged child's pose. Keep your block also somewhere close by. So very similar to wide-legged child's pose, you're widening your knees, but instead of having your toes together, you're trying to align your ankles with your knees, with your feet flexed. So that same distance here. And if you don't have a blanket or anything, you can always fold up your mat and roll it underneath you. So some people like to keep the hips exactly at the same line as the knees. Some people like to push it back. Just try to find a spot where you feel a good amount of intensity without going past your edge. And maybe you stay up onto the palms, or maybe you come down onto the forearms, or you can even also come down onto the block. I like to just, again, use the block underneath the forehead so that I don't have to use my arms quite as much. If you have a bolster at home, you can also lay down on the bolster. And this is probably what I think is one of the most intense poses that we have in Yin. So try to always stay with your breath. Remind your upper body to relax as much as it can, and even reminding the legs themselves to relax. If you had lowered onto your forearms, come back up onto the palms and go really slowly. Be gentle here as you come out of this one. So I like to just bring the toes in first and just slide one knee in to meet the other. And we're gonna lower down onto our backs, and you can move the blanket out of the way. You might need a block for the IT band stretch that we're gonna come into next. So as you lower down, I'll start actually with the left leg first so you can see better what I'm doing. Crossing your left ankle over the top of your right knee and flexing that foot. Instead of pulling the knee in towards the belly like we would for reclined swan, the IT band stretch, you're just going to drop your right thigh all the way down over to the right. So the left foot maybe will touch the mat. If it doesn't come all the way down to the floor, this is where you want to set your foot on a block, just so you're closing that gap between your foot and the ground. But if you do have your foot, or once you have it placed wherever you want it, I like to grab a hold of the ankle with the right hand. And the closer in you bring that knee, the deeper the stretch will feel here. And you can even also use your right hand to push that knee away from you. So deep stretch through the outer hip and into the IT band. And you can reach your left arm out to the side. So there's a little bit of a side body stretch as well. Adjust however you need to. Just lift the belly, uncross the legs. We'll move to the other side. So this time crossing your right ankle over the top of that left knee and flexing the foot. Drop your left leg all the way over to the side until your right foot either lowers onto a block or directly to the mat. You can reach your right arm out to ground your right shoulder and either hold on to the ankle with your left hand, or you can use your left palm to push the knee away from you, just whatever feels the best here. We're always trying to intend that right knee away from us so that it points directly up towards the ceiling or as close to the ceiling as we can. Let's lift back up and uncross. We'll take reclined butterfly pose, our last pose before Shavasana. Feet together, knees apart. And your arms or hands can go wherever is the most comfortable to you here. ease your way to Shavasana, straightening out the legs, reaching out with your arms, turning your palms to face up to the sky. And really settle the hips here down on the mat. After all of that work, notice how the hips, the pelvis, the low back is feeling. And resist the urge to fidget or move. Just let yourself enjoy these few minutes of rest and relaxation. Breathe deeply to reawaken your body, bringing sensation and movement back to the extremities. Stretch really long, extending the arms up overhead. And we'll roll to one side, coming up to take a seat. Close your eyes and join your hands together at the front of your heart. And bowing in. Namaste. Thank you so much, yogis, for doing this hip opening Yin Yoga practice with me. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to practice again with you soon.